Hello, and welcome to the Love Baxter podcast. I'm Adam Greenbaum, the founder of Love Baxter, which was built in honor of my beloved Boston Terrier Baxter, who passed away suddenly in October of 2024. Today, I have my friend, Dr. Monica Tarantino, with us. She's a veterinarian. She's the founder of Pet Loss Community, the founder of the Senior Dog Veterinary Society, and the founder of Senior Dog Revolution.
I can't stop, Adam. I can't
Can't
stop
stop.
finding things.
And you love senior dogs.
Yes, and I love old dogs. It's all
You
for
love
them,
old.
honestly, and the pet parent that attached to them.
Well, I'm happy you're here. I'm actually really happy you're here because I want to talk about senior veterinary care, and this is for pet parents who are watching, and I want to talk about senior pet care is hard, and
It is.
it's so hard. I have a 15-year-old Boston Terrier upstairs, who has Cushing's, has hypothyroidism, and still lives this just incredible life. And every day is a choose your own direction adventure, it feels like. And there's never 2 days that are alike. So first off, you go to veterinary school, become a veterinarian. Did you love senior dogs when you were becoming a veterinarian? Like what made you say, I really love old dogs?
Yeah, good question. So they weren't even on my radar for most of my 20s. And then I had a dog named Frodo Baggins Tarantino. He's a little Westie. And he grew up with me in my 20s. And then when I got into vet school, I went to vet school a little bit later. It was a second career for me. When I went to vet school, Frodo came with me, of course. He was like my ride or die buddy. And he became a senior dog. He hit age 10. And he went from being this dog that was totally healthy his entire life. He was really just into the vet for our annual visits every year, to a dog that all of a sudden I could not keep out of the animal hospital. He had like all the classic things. He had neck pain. He had a collapsing trachea. He had a heart murmur that kind of set in. He had even a mass on his spleen that we had to do surgery, emergency surgery for at age 11. So all these different things kept coming on for him. And I just kept watching my best friend, just kind of like his health and his start to succumb to basically the aging process. And that was really hard. And so when I graduated vet school, I remember like graduating and being like, all right, I saw old dogs differently. I was like, these dogs are different. The pet parents that come along with them, they have different concerns and feelings that are going into owning an older dog. And I thought that I was going to graduate, get good at becoming a vet first, and the first 5 years doing that because it takes a little bit of time to get that underneath your belt. And then I wanted to focus more in on this older demographic of dog because they were really one of the biggest struggles I had. And it's interesting when you're in vet school. Vet school is really funny because it's like this time where you know a lot, but you also like don't know anything at all, right? Because you haven't really used or like practiced information as a vet yet. And you're surrounded by the brightest minds in the vet profession because you're at school. It's like literally all the professors are publishing papers and pushing medicine forward. But yet when I would come in with my old dog and I'd be like, help me, like he's falling apart, like what to do? And they're like, oh, we'll just treat it and he'll be fine. Like go home and just monitor or whatever. I just felt just like not understood. And I felt really unprepared for what was happening to him and what was about to happen. And it's funny too, because I think in hindsight, you could tell me about this like with Baxter and Sophie, but I think in hindsight, when you have an old dog, there's this expectation that you just know that they're old and that you're eventually going to lose them. But when you actually are the person that owns the old dog, you're like, yeah, I know that. But also like all I've known for the past 10 years has been life with this animal. So I don't really know that. Like, I get it as a concept, but like as a person, I don't really understand that. So tell me what it was like for you
Well,
with
yeah,
Baxter.
it's interesting you say that because I, every day with Sophie's different. And Baxter, to be honest, never became an old man. I mean, he was 12 and a half. My wife and I had this joke because he looked so good. We'd go, walk at the park and he would just be so crazy. People would be like, wow, he's really hyper. And we'd be like, sorry, he's a puppy, but he wasn't a puppy. He
Yeah.
was like 12. But yeah, like one of the things that I think drove me to start Love Baxter and, reach out to you and reach out to other people is, there was all these situations where you go to the vet and, no one ever says like your dog's old and we should start preparing for this or this or this or this. Whether you have a 10-year-old Boston Terrier or you have a 12 or 13-year-old, larger dog, whatever, you know what I mean? It's like when you go to the vet, no one ever says like, hey, we're here for your pet's first senior blood work. Let's
Yeah.
sit down and let's talk about this and let's figure out what we're going to do. And let's put a plan in place. And I also want to talk to you that this is the average life expectancy of these animals. And this is where they're at right now. And, and yada, yada, yada. That
Yeah.
doesn't really happen. So then one day you wake up, your dog is old, and you're like, wait a second, since when has Sophie had 12 medications and
Yeah.
supplements? Since when were we spending $300 a month on supplements? And it just kind of sneaks up on you.
It does. It totally does. Yeah. And you're right. And we don't do a great job of that yet, although we're hoping to change that now,
So
especially
how
with,
do we change that?
well, I think what we have to do is we have to have open conversations between pet parents of old dogs and the experiences they've had, and with, of course, the vet field, and talk about how unique and different uh, this demographic of pet really is. That's the biggest thing that we're trying to do as Senior Dog Veterinary Society is like be like, look, we've all been practicing medicine for a long time. The truth, elderly canines and of course elderly cats, all elderly animals, but elderly pets are a totally unique group of patient. They really should be treated as their own separate demographic and category, which they really are, because they are prone to diseases of chronic pain. They're prone to quality of life issues. They're likely have polypharmacy or multiple medications that they're on. They may be facing end of life decisions with owners. Their owners are coming in and likely got anticipatory grief, right? They've got
Yeah.
a lot of things that are going on, and they need a lot more education, and they need a lot more, I think, a different approach to that group. And so that's really the conversation that we're trying to have, and the reach we're trying to get within the vet field, because the truth is that, and I don't know if people that be listening to this know this or not, but I started an Instagram account and grew it to several, like tens of thousands, right? And so I end up talking to a lot of pet parents out there about their senior pets. They write into me a lot, and I have a community. And one of the things that always comes up is this thought, like, I don't know how to find a vet that loves old dogs. And for me as a vet, when I hear that, and I think about my coworkers, my colleagues, I'm always like, what do you mean? Like, they all love old dogs. Like, they're really great vets. I'm like, well, and the truth is that we don't do it differently enough for old dogs. And that is a struggle that pet parents actually had. And we probably have a lot that we can be doing differently in the vet world, with these older pets. And so, I wanted to, I think with part of the thing that I think could help solve that is to connect those two groups of people, to make pet parents aware that, sorry, this is my cavalier down here snorting, but to make pet parents aware that when their dog becomes that age that they are different, and these are the things you need to look out for, and these are things to expect with them, and then to also make sure that the vet field is also approaching them differently as well, and treating them like, I think, giving them the special attention that they deserve when they walk into animal hospitals.
Yeah, and look, we have an amazing general practice veterinarian. We had, an internal specialist who saw Baxter and Sophie. We have dermatologists. Like they all love our animals. They all treat them well. They all, say, yeah, they're senior. We want to do this and this and this and this. But I still think like the most pet parents aren't having like the senior dog chat until the dog is 3 or 4 years into their 25%, whatever their lifespan is,
Yeah.
like deep into their senior years. And I would just tell me if I'm crazy, like you're a veterinarian. Would I first come in and you say, hey, you have a 7-year-old golden retriever and we're gonna do blood work. Would it be crazy for a veterinarian to say, okay, Adam, Liz, sit down. You have a 7-year-old golden retriever. That's a senior dog. You might not know that because your dog is happy and eating well and running around at the park. This is a senior dog. This is what the next couple of years are going to look like. The average lifespan for this dog is 9 to 11 years or 8 to 10 years, whatever it is. It's not that far. We're closer to that than we are at the beginning. So that's kind of out there now. That's sort of part one. Part two is food's going to change. Medicine's going to change. We're going to want to see you twice a year because we're going to want to do senior blood work. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is I want you to understand that we are in the final stages of your pet's life. I know that sounds crazy, and you tell me after my little monologue here if I'm like nuts for saying this, but like, would it be crazy for a vet to say like, I need you to understand that it is expensive and end of life care is something you should start thinking about now, and the cost of end of life care is expensive. The cost of euthanasia is going to be $500 to $1,000. And I know you don't want to hear that, but I'm trying to be your vet and be your doctor and have a conversation with you about this and talk about your lifespan. And I don't think that's any different than if, my in-laws are in their mid 70s. Like I assume when they go to the doctor, they have conversations about, hey, you're in your mid 70s, this is what you should be doing. So is it crazy to want vets to have that conversation with a 7-year the parents of a 7-year-old dog? Or is that just gonna lead to unnecessary chaos? And if you're out there watching, ask yourself, you have a if you have a 5-year-old Great Dane and they say, "Hey, we're at the end of this dog's life," it's like it's probably pretty jarring, right?
It's pretty jarring. It's really interesting hearing you say that. No, I don't think it's crazy to have that talk. I think we should start having more conversations like that, depending on the patient that walks in the room and kind of where they're at in their senior years. So absolutely, I think that should be what we should be doing, and we're trying to move towards that with Senior Dog Vet Society because it's really this movement. And there's vets out there that want to do that and want to do it differently. That are already doing it. But you're right; it's not a standard yet in our field, but we'd love to make it one. But no, I don't think it's crazy. I do think that from like a vet perspective, having had lots of conversations like this with pet parents, there that many pet parents are at different places of what they're able to hear at certain times. So like with a 7-year-old, I loved everything that you said, but once you get to the point where you're talking about like end of life care is expensive, they may not be able to actually hear me say that to them because they're going to have been processing all of the things that you just said ahead of time, which are really important. So maybe I wouldn't have that portion of it with them at age 7, but certainly after I've talked about it at age 7, 7.5 when they come in to see me, 8, and then I could start having that and be like, okay, we don't want to think about this, but it is important for us to start talking about it because we want to make sure things look good when we get there and you're prepared. I think that at some point it's important to bring all of that up. So yeah, I do. I do. And I think I think there's going to be a little bit of learning curve. And I think different people are a little bit different too with what they want to do. Some people come in and they're like, we don't want to know, and I don't recommend that. But
No.
we do have people that come in, they're like, we don't want to know. And so I have to figure out how do I communicate to that person so that they do know, right? What I think they really should know, or that we communicate to them so that they're doing the things that I want them to do to help that pet in front of them. So um yeah, I think that, but I do think that that should be, and my hope is that that will be a standard for pets over age 7 moving forward in the vet field over the next decade. It takes a long time to get through, as you guys know this, in really big industries, like even like human
Yeah.
medicine, it takes a really long time to kind of shift the whole group over. But that's what we're trying to do right now with vet medicine. It's an important mission.
Yeah. I mean, you've heard me talk about this. When we were spending tens of $1,000s on Baxter's care at the end,
Yeah.
no one ever told us he was dying. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that was, and you're right. As a pet parent, if they said he might not make it, we may not have even heard that. But, you know, I don't know how we transition to a world. I mean, I will tell you that I feel like I'm a good pet parent. I feel like I know what I'm doing. I do good research. I ask a lot of questions. And yet, with my 15-year-old dog upstairs, it kind of feels like all bets are off.
Yeah.
Literally, there are times where in the morning, I'm like, this dog could live 10 more years. She is out of this world.
Mm.
And then there's times where I'm like, oh my
It's
God, I,
near.
I need to like hug her tonight because, I don't know how much longer she's going to be here. And that's like a day in the life of a 15-year-old dog.
Yeah.
So for pet parents out there watching, you know, and you do a lot of this on your Instagram and you do a lot of this, which we're going to link in the show notes here. And then, you do a lot of this on your website, but maybe just a couple tips. What are things that, us pet parents, and it doesn't have to be a 15-year-old Boston Terrier, any, old dogs, what should we be doing? What are some tips on feeding, on exercise, on everything, especially through the unknown? Like there were, we just had a period where Sophie was like, I'm not going to eat for 3 days, and it was very stressful and we had to play a
Yeah.
lot of games. And now she's like eating her old kibble, like the other stuff. She actually just walked downstairs. So she knew we were talking about her, which is perfect. But it's like every day is such a winding road. Like what are like 3 or 4 bucket things that like pet parents should know if they've got a senior dog at home?
Well, one of the things that's so important for pet parents to know is just to be aware of the fact that older pets are more prone to chronic pain, right? And that's really important because that's something that impacts their quality of life. And the two places that I see that the most as a general practitioner is going to be in their joints. So, like in their skeleton, whether it's back, front leg, hips, wherever it is, and then also in their mouth. So, with their teeth. And with chronic pain as they get older, really there's the key to it is really identifying where it is, but then also treating it. When you can treat it, you could take it away, for example, like a rotten tooth or like dental disease. Most of the time, if we can pull those teeth, that dental pain's gone, resolved, right? Is like we fix it. With things such as arthritis, for example, or like kind of more chronic back disease, those will progress as they get older. But what you want to make sure you have is a chronic pain plan in place with your vet, because what you want to do is make sure that you're adjusting that as they get older and trying to control it to a place where they can still have a comfortable, happy life. So I think chronic pain awareness is one of the biggest things that I talk about to older pet parents, because they all say the same thing. They want their dog to have a happy, happy senior years where they're
Yeah.
thriving. And you can't really have a dog that's thriving if they're experiencing chronic pain that's uncontrolled. Okay. So it's not necessarily that we're taking the pain completely away. We can't do that. I think it's unrealistic, but we can control the pain as best we can. And so I think that's one of the tenets that I tell senior dog parents to be aware of. I also do think that it's really important to understand that as they get older, your dog that maybe just went into the vet once a year, they're going to start to need to go in more frequently. And that's just a thing, because when they become senior, to me, what it really means is that the aging process is starting to impact them a little bit. And sometimes it's impacting them internally, and we can't see that. So I have this, I talk about different categories of senior dogs. And one of the ones that I talk about a lot is this concept of like an early senior, because I will have, for example, the 7-year-old golden retriever that comes into my exam room, and they don't look like they feel old at all, right? They're just bouncing around. The owners are like, he
Yeah.
still acts like he's 3 or 4. And they talk about that. So when I'm like, "Oh, he's a senior," they're like, "No, he's not." And so, I like to talk to them about it, that even if you're not seeing stuff, there you go, like, there's a senior.
She's
Um
here to learn. She's here to learn with us.
Oh, I love that she's here. She's perfect. So a lot of pet parents, one expectation I think to have is to understand that they do need to go more frequently to see us, because there are new things that are be coming up, and 6 months for them is not 6 months in our time, right? 6 months is like several years for them. So that's really not so super frequent if you think about it that way. So I think that is another really important concept for you to understand. Um, and then I'm trying to think of more things that are important. I do think, this is just to mention, and I know because Love Baxter is such an amazing platform that is doing something that no one's ever really done in this space before, but it's so important. I hope we get to talk about pet loss at some point, and the different types of grief that pet parents can have. But um, I think that it is important that you do start to think about what you want the end of life for a senior pet to look like, even if you're years away. Just an idea
Yeah.
for it, because and you've experienced this with Baxter, and I experienced this recently with Jose, who was my youngest, healthiest senior dog that we had. Jose, it was a 11-and-a-half-year-old husky mix that I had, that we lost to an aggressive cancer within 9 days of us diagnosing it. And he was the healthiest dog we had. He could still, I mean, we didn't run him because he was 11, but he could still run if we took him outside. He sprinted and played like he was still 6 or 7, and he looked so healthy on the outside, but he had something happening on the inside. So you can be surprised with a senior. So the surprise, I think, is really difficult. So I think just starting to think about what end of life plan you would have if a surprise came, or if something, or if you were able to plan and have the time, or what the things are that pet loves to do, is really important to do when they hit that age.
Yeah, and what's funny is, like, you go back to 2023, Sophie was under the bed, "Don't come near me, I don't wanna eat." Like, she was, like, telling us, "I wanna die." And it was hard, and we had to beg the best internal specialist in our area to get to see her. She said, "I'm about to retire," and we're like, "Then this is who you need to this needs to be your final ride here, please." So we got her in, thank you, Dr. Duesberg. Um, and and yeah, she diagnosed Sophie with Cushing's and hypothyroidism, and said, "Here's the 10 medications that Sophie needs. It's $500 a month." And as you all just saw, here she is. Still walks about a mile a day, still goes up and down the stairs at home. We have a 7-month-old in the house. She still fights with him when she's in the mood too. And, it's great. But yeah, it is just,
7-month-old dog. Just want to, you said 7-month-old. I was like, but they don't have a baby.
oh,
You
yeah,
have a
7-month-old. Yeah, we have a
the Boston
7-month-old
Terrier.
puppy in the house. Yeah, yeah, another Boston Terrier. But yeah, I mean, it is still, I still worry. I'm full of anticipatory grief. It's interesting though, I lost Baxter at 12 and a half, and it felt like he was just like ripped away from me
Yeah,
instantly. Maybe how you felt about Jose. It's
totally.
just like, it's you grieve the moments it didn't happen yet, the moments that were planned 3 months later, a week later. And with Soph, I oddly, even though I had her for 2 years before I even had Baxter, I, you know, I feel like I'm at peace with her life. I'll obviously be brokenhearted and devastated when she's gone because I don't even know if I know how to live without Sophie in my life. Like, I've thought
Right.
about that. Like, Sophie was with me through every important phase of my life in the last 15 years,
Yeah.
has been with Sophie. So the anticipatory grief we feel, my wife and I, is just through the roof. And there's just so much to figure out every day. And the problem is, you know, I love veterinary medicine. I've dedicated my whole career to veterinary medicine, but there's an expectation that we as pet parents know the best, and then pet parents have this expectation that vets should be telling us every little thing. And like, I want the pet parents of the world and the veterinarians of the world to find this middle ground and to have the hard conversations because I have Sophie, again, general practice, regular veterinarian, internal specialist, dermatologist. She sees all of them every couple months, especially lately because we've had some stuff, and none of the three have yet to say to me still, like, "Hey, dude,
She's 15 and a half
she's
or
15.
15. Yeah.
Yeah, you hit the jackpot 10 times over.
Wow.
You got her to 15 and she's happy and she's healthy, and any given day she might not wake up tomorrow, and this
Right.
is what I want you to be prepared for. So why don't we talk about pet loss and pet grief, and that you started Pet Loss Community, which we partner with
Yeah.
at Love Baxter, to help people who are grieving a pet. I mean, I can promise you, while we're recording this, yesterday was 9 days since, or I'm sorry, 9 months since Baxter passed, and I'm not over it. And that's
Yeah.
anyone who's out there watching this that knows me like very well personally, you would hear that and say that's not Adam. I grew up with a lot of trauma in my life, and was able to just like have this wonderful part of my brain when things are really hard. I can just like put it into a vault, delete it, and it's like gone forever. I don't remember it. But with Baxter, I don't want to forget it. I want to feel the pain of him every day. I want to honor his memory by feeling that pain. So, and Pet Loss Community doesn't just work with people who have pets that passed away. It,
Yeah.
you have people that obviously have pet loss grief, you have people that have anticipatory grief, and you have people that deal with living grief. So maybe just talk about that.
Yeah. So Pet Loss Community is honestly, we're so excited to be partnered up with Love Baxter. We are a group that focuses on supporting pet parents that are dealing with almost any type of grief. And I formed it alongside two amazing women, Lisa Littman, who is a veterinarian. She's like my partner in crime. And then Dr. Katie Lawler, who is a psychologist out of Stanford. And we formed it because we were online. We had these bigger platforms on social media that we had grown, and we were online. And we did this. I think I had lost a pet, and we were talking about grief after losing a pet, the three of us together. And it was like not really talked about. This is probably several years ago, not really talked about a lot, even openly, even a few years ago. We did this big Instagram live, and within 24 to 48 hours, there was like 20,000 views of this thing because people are hurting out there after they lose a pet or even before they lose a pet. And so that's how we were like, God, well, we need to provide this place where people can talk to each other and provide a community basically where we can support one another and make it the best. And that's what we do at Pet Loss Community. But we target, three different types of grief. And you were talking about one that's really interesting to me. But certainly there's pet loss grief, right? The grief that you feel after you lose a beloved animal. Doesn't matter what type of animal that is. There is grief associated with nearly all of them. And then there's also anticipatory grief, which is the fear of losing something even while they're still in your life. And you're talking about that with Sophie, where you guys wake up and you're like, it's choose your own adventure. She didn't eat for 3 days very much. And you guys are like scrambling, trying to figure out what to do. And then she's bouncing around and going for a swim in the water with you. It's the biggest highs and the biggest lows, and you're just like riding those waves every day with Sophie. And I think with anticipatory grief, it's really interesting because you still have that thing in your life that you're grieving over, but you're actively grieving over the future loss of them, right? So you're in this grief state. And a lot of times the people, I think, in particular with pet parents of older pets, they don't know that they're in it. They don't even realize it. It just feels like for me, it felt like anxiety. I had a beautiful old black lab mix. She was her name was Becca. She was found as a puppy on the side of the road in a cardboard box in Arkansas, and and
Baxter, wow.
and my twin brother adopted her. And then when he had a kid who was severely allergic to dogs, I adopted her at age 10. She lived with us for the last 8.5 years. But for Becca, Becca was one of these really interesting dogs where like she had new diseases and conditions come up every like 6 months for her towards the last like 4 years of her life. And we're like, oh, this is a liver tumor. All right, well, this is definitely going to be our last like, year with her. So it's a slow growing liver tumor, but we don't know. Then, she had like a neurologic event. We're like, oh, this is it. Then she started having seizures. We're like, this is going to be it. We'll just try this medication just because she still seems to want to be here. And then she's on the medication for the next 2 years, and we're like, what is happening? We experienced anticipatory grief with Becca just like for 5 years with her
Wow.
because she just was this trooper, and still really wanted to be here with us, and we could somehow make that happen with her. So I think that's really important. And then living grief is the third grief that you mentioned, Adam, and I think that one's really important. That one we tend to kind of focus more on after, like maybe even in a time right now when you're talking about Baxter, like even 9 months out, like that time where you are learning how to live more long term with that grief. So for me, Orwell, who was a little 16 and a half year old Chinese crested that I only had for 14 years, I adopted him at age 12. Or sorry,
Oh, you
four
said
years.
14,
Four,
yeah, I was
four,
gonna say,
yeah, but sorry, a lot of numbers there. 4 years, I adopted him at age 12. But Orwell, I lost him over a year ago, and I'm still grieving for him. I was like sad last night about him because for a lot of different reasons, but you basically are trying to learn how to live and cope long term with not having this pet, and that's a very real phenomenon, and we have a
yeah.
lot of great pet parents that talk about that in our groups.
Yeah, it's hard, but I mean, I think this is why, this is a big reason I started Love Baxter. It's because, your dog gets 9 or 10 and it's confusing, and all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, "Wow, Sophie's face is white. When did that happen?" And, watching her kind of like, after like a hard day at the park, watching her kind of a little sore, you're like, "Man, I don't ever remember you getting sore." And,
Yeah,
it's just so hard. And, like I was saying, I I'm trying to figure out like what is needed for pet parents to, and maybe it's just all of us saying we're going to educate ourselves more. We're going to be more on top of this, because I can tell you all, as I've been building out Love Baxter, I talked to 1,000+ pet parents and just ask them like, what do you need on this site? And the comments we've gotten and the messages we've gotten since launching, everyone just says the same thing. It's always so shocking when their pet dies. I've
yeah,
yet to meet anyone who's really felt like, "Wow, I had this great moment and we got to say goodbye." Even you with Jose, you're a very, very, very good veterinarian who cares deeply about your pets, lives in this space. I mean, it was 9 days from diagnosis to
losing
saying
him.
goodbye. I guess my
Yeah,
question is that just the nature of this? Is there something that I'm not thinking about, I'm not doing right? And, it's like, 'cause I'm asking this question as a pet parent who with Sophie, who you all just got to meet, thankfully. It's like, you know, I'm struggling with, because I didn't get to make this decision with Baxter. I struggle with, is it going to be better to be a week early and really, really, really make her comfortable and happy? Which is, in theory, fine. Anyone can say you could do that, but or is it better to have those extra days, but then it's, the decision gets taken from you again? I mean, I don't know if you can
right.
all see, there's a cat
I
over
can't.
my
Yeah,
shoulder behind me too. I mean, same thing, right? We rescued her. She's going to be 10 soon. We were told at her last vet exam that she has a tiny spleen and a tiny kidney and some other kidney stuff like a lot of cats have, and she's got um, some like early signs of patella issues. So it's like, again, that's a senior cat, right? She's this big, she's bright orange. There's no white or anything on her. There's no gray, and yet, you know, like, how do we prepare for that? So
right.
I'm kind of rambling, but I guess the fact of the matter is, like, I think that I'm speaking for all pet parents, even people who are in the veterinary space, like I was for 10 years, or a veterinarian, or people who like really educate themselves on this stuff. It's like the senior pet stuff is so, so hard.
It is really hard. I think it really is. And it's because we care so much, right? Because they're so important to us, especially by the time they become a senior. If you've been lucky enough to have them for most of their life, they're a part of your family. They're a true
Yeah.
part of your family. There's no one for most of us. I think we actually talk to most people that have had different losses in their life who are people that love pets, and you ask them about what the grief felt like after losing like a dad or like a family member or whatever, and you ask them what the grief felt like after losing a pet, a lot of
Yeah.
times they're like, it was harder losing my pet, which is they're embarrassed to say, they're shy to say, because that pet was literally by your side all the
Yeah.
time. Even your mom or your dad, they're not by your side all the time, like
No.
thankfully, right? But that pet was there and they don't judge you at all. And so the bond there is really deep, and so it is conversations that I think we do need to have more. And that's one of the things that I love doing with Love Baxter is just like talking about it more, like every aspect of it, right? Like on your website, you have blogs that dive into what might seem like the most minute thing, but are literally actual things that people struggle with. And they'll ask me at the vet, what do I do with my other dog when it's
Yeah.
time to say goodbye to my one dog, their sibling or whatever? Should they be there? Should they not? How do I tell family?
Yep.
What if me and my significant other disagree on this? How do we figure that out? There's all these different types of nuances that I think we should be talking about, and helping people understand that they're not alone for if they're struggling with that, and that we can talk about it and figure out maybe better ways to do that, and um, guidelines for people to use. So I do think it's just such an important thing for us to do. And like this, I think we've talked about this before. It's like it's like an ugly space, right? Like no one wants to talk about death or like losing a pet or the decline that happens as age starts to hit all of us. No one really wants to talk about that. It's not like a really sexy topic,
Yeah.
but it is one of the most invaluable and impactful events of our lives. And that's how I talk about with things like losing a pet. We always talk about, oh, we bought a house, we got married, I lost my mom, I lost my dad, whatever it was. But like, hey, guess what? Losing a pet, it's just right up there with like the things that are gonna be most impactful for you.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh
I would say
in
losing
your life.
Baxter was the I had, I've had some very harsh, bad moments in my life, but nothing could come I said this to my father-in-law, I said, "No offense to you, I love you, man, but, like, it would be your daughter, something happened to your daughter, and then, these dogs, and that's it,
Yeah.
like, nothing else, you could do anything to me, but, you hurt these animals and you, Nolly, sorry, and the cat." So let me ask you this, just for the pet parents watching. If you had to give 3 quick hit tips, just 3 on like, okay, you got a senior pet at home. A tip could be go to your vet and ask for a plan. A tip could be to, you know, focus on the scale and put together like a pain scale thing. Like, for anyone who's got a senior pet, whether they're 15 or 9, what would be the 3 things that a pet parent should take away from this conversation today to say, okay, you know what? And maybe number 1 is, and I'm answering the question for you, sorry. I'll
I don't
say,
what would you say?
yeah,
Tell
well, I
me.
would say like number 1 should be like, go make the plan. And
Yeah.
then that's my number 1. So, but what would
Yeah.
as a veterinarian who knows her stuff, like what would be the 3 things that people should do?
Um Well, certainly, I think, I mentioned like the chronic pain plan. So like go to your vet and ask like, what is my pet's chronic pain plan? Or can we make a chronic pain plan for them? Or like, what should I be looking for? Get familiar with this topic of chronic pain in your older dog or older cat, all of them, older horse, any of them, because it's certainly something that impacts them. Um, I think that certainly remembering that everything comes down to quality of life. Like there's not one decision that I make in an animal hospital that's not related to quality of life. Like sure, your dog's sick and we've got a disease that we're treating or whatever it is. All of that is because I want this, which is the best quality of life. So I want to manage the disease as best as possible because it means that they have a better quality of life. I want to do this procedure, this dental, that's a routine dental for them. Why? Because I think in the long run, it's going to contribute to a better quality of life for them in the long run when they're age 13, 14, and 15, if we're lucky enough to have them. So those are things that I think are important. I want 4. The other one that I mentioned previously was to make sure that you're aware that they do need to go to the vet more frequently because there are things that come quickly. And that is a way where we can have conversations about things that matter more often. Um, and then the very last one, which I think is one that I think you're kind of alluding to, but I do think it's important to create an end of life plan for your senior. as soon as they become a senior, just have an idea of what that could look like. But then, certainly those years come on, you really need to start kind of thinking about what you want that to look like if different situations come up. And that's one of the things I talk about. I think I told you I had this mini course for people called Peaceful Goodbyes, and I really teach them like my philosophy on making an end of life plan. And one of the things I talk about in there is you want an end of life plan if you get the choice, right? So if you have some time and you can make the decision for it, which is not what happened with you and Baxter, really. You
Yeah.
guys, it was all so quick.
Yep.
Um, then you want a plan where you can make the choice. You also want to be able to have an emergency plan, or maybe like the pet, for example, Orwell, my 16-and-a-half-year-old Chinese crested that I lost, he had his second bout of congestive heart failure, which came on really fast overnight. And within 8 hours, we lost him. And I didn't really have a choice but at the hospital to say goodbye to him there because I wasn't going to bring this dog that could barely oxygenate and wasn't doing well home so that I could have it at home euthanasia with him. So just having an idea of what their current diseases are, what the possible things that can happen with them that you guys should be looking out for that could mean end of life, and then like what kind of decisions you might have to make. Like just start thinking about that stuff and talking to your vet about it.
I
It's
love it.
important.
Yeah, I mean, and you nailed it, and that's absolutely right. And I kind of lost my words there for a second, but I was just thinking about Baxter. It's, he died on a Monday morning, and on Wednesday we were actually told his blood work looked perfect. That was the word that was used. Blood work looks perfect, and he was gone a couple days later. And what happened between us going home and probably top three night of my life, which was a normal night, yet I just knew he was okay, and my vision of the next 2, 3 years with him were kind of set, and then the next day he collapsed, and then he was hospitalized, and then he was peeing blood, and then he couldn't walk, and then, then we said goodbye. It's like, I know it's hard to have this conversation, but I promise you, there is not a conversation on this planet. I'm begging you, there's not a conversation harder on this planet than what we went through in those 72 hours of what having a dog that you're told he's perfect and he beat it to that over such a short period. I mean, you may as well have just stabbed me 10 billion times. I mean, that's how it felt.
Yeah.
And if my wife and I had a plan, uh, would it have made it easier? I don't know, but there was a lot of franticness. There was,
Yeah.
and I'll tell that story another time, but there was a midnight thing where I pulled over on the side of the road at midnight on the freeway and just looked at my wife and said, "We're taking him home. We're not going to the vet right now. If he dies in bed, he dies in bed." But and that's what you do when you don't have a plan. You're on the freeway 20 minutes from home in the middle at midnight on a Saturday because you're confused.
Right. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think and we've talked before about what happened with Baxter. Sometimes there are like really, really difficult scenarios where you don't know how it's going to go.
Yeah.
And then you don't know how it's going to go 6 hours later. And then you don't know how it's going to go 12 hours later. Then you still don't know how it's going to go 18 hours later. And it's extremely difficult to make that call as to what to do. And, and, and I really truly think that what you and Liz were faced with was an extraordinarily difficult, and what Baxter was faced with that was extraordinarily difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
Um, and I know there's a lot more we could talk about with that situation, but I do think that was extraordinarily difficult. And we may face things like that, and that could happen. That makes it hard. But
Well, I think the big takeaway from today, and you heard it from a pet parent who went through this and who's built this platform. You're hearing it from a veterinarian whose sole focus is on senior pets, senior dogs. I think the biggest thing is like make a plan, have the conversations with your vet. Those are two hard things to do because you're like coming to terms with the end. But I promise you, like the nicest thing that came out of it was that my final 24 hours with Baxter were calm. Now he was in pain and we went and got him a big pain shot but it was calm. We got to talk a lot. We got to go to the beach and take photos and say goodbye. And, and I feel lucky about that because between that 24 hours, the 24 hours on the Wednesday where he was told he's perfect, everything in between that Thursday through Saturday was just absolute
yeah,
chaos. And
yeah,
it'll carry with me for a long time. But
yeah,
no, this was a great conversation. It's a hard
yeah.
conversation, but it's what we as pet parents need to have. So obviously people are going to walk out of here and be your biggest fan. Where can they find you online? Where can they learn more about taking better care of their senior pets?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me, by the way. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I think it's really refreshing for me to talk to someone else that, like, loves senior pets. So whether it's a pet parent that I work with or whether it's you here, Adam, I really it's really enjoyable for me because I learn something every single time. So you guys can find me online. You can go to either seniordogrevolution.com, or you can go, if you're on Instagram, follow me at seniordogdoc. And those are probably the two easiest places to find me.
I love it.
Yeah,
Well, I can't thank you enough. Pet parents, if you're out there, please go check out Senior Dog Revolution. Go follow Monica on Instagram. And while you're at it, check out lovebaxter.com and go to the articles and resources page. Search anything. We have thousands of resources on like edge case topics, like Monica said. Follow us on social media. We're at Love Baxter Co. on most platforms. And I'll make sure all of Monica's links are in the show notes. And thank you again for taking such good care of your pets out there. If you're watching this, it means you care. And thank you to Monica for being here.
thanks a lot. Happy to do it.